You know, they're like Jess's age. They're right in between her. I think they must be like 10 and 8 or something.
We have arrived here today at Carlisle Castle, walking in through underneath the gatehouse, which is still intact, so that's really cool. We are faced with an enormous bailey, which at the moment is full of buildings that are from the 19th century because Carlisle Castle has been garrisoned since then. It was never Swiss cheesed by the parliamentarians, and it is remarkably intact. One of the more intact castles that we've seen here in England.
Scary face. Well, that's a cheesy grin. However, it's quite scary.
Ah! Oh, sorry.
Looking across the bailey would have been the stables, and that is where David and Yeyin were imprisoned by the Castellan of Carlisle. And those, when after Thomas Hartley frees them, he burns the stables to the ground.
This I put into my new book. It's a little door that enters in between the two portcullises, and it's a way to come in, and then you can go through this little door, and then you can come around without having to lift up this second portcullis.
Carlisle Castle represents 9 centuries of military and royal activity near the Anglo-Scottish border. Robert the Bruce took it and lost it twice, and it was continuously occupied until 1959.
Many readers over the years have asked me about the difference between a crenel and a merlon, or in fact what they are. A crenel is the gap in a wall in this sort of classic castle-looking thing, and the higher bits are merlons, and that's why this whole wall walk is called a crenellation.
Carlisle Castle was heavily modified in the 19th century. They demolished a whole bunch of the medieval buildings that were in the inner ward and built 19th century buildings to house soldiers. So the interior, in a way, though it's very crowded, and that might have been what it was like during the Middle Ages, the buildings themselves are very different.
So David and Yeyin were not put in here. So this would have been a much more difficult situation to get out of.
Carlisle Castle was also the final scene of the Jacobite Rebellion. 127 Scottish prisoners were held here and executed after Culloden in 1746. To build Bertiswald Fort, they had to drain the marsh, and archaeologists can tell over time the ups and downs of the fort based upon whether or not they allowed the marsh to creep back in or not. Right now I can tell you it's very wet. Hadrian's Wall was begun in the 2nd century AD, ordered by, amazingly enough, Hadrian, who was a very powerful ruler from Rome, to demarcate the difference between England, which the Romans had conquered, and Scotland, which they had not. In some places now, Hadrian's Wall is still taller than my head. Archaeologists think that it was between 3.6 meters and 4.5 meters when it was built. Hadrian's Wall extends 77 miles from just around Carlisle in the west to Newcastle upon Tyne in the east. It is marked every mile by mile castles, which are little forts that would allow entrance and exit from England into Scotland and vice versa. one of the sort of tragedies from a historical perspective of Hadrian's Wall is that it was mostly intact up until the Normans came 1,000 years after the Romans came. So the Norman conquest was 1066, and when they got up here to the north and they wanted to control the populace, which wasn't any happier to have them as their rulers as they had been the Normans, they started raiding the walls for stones to build their castles.
So Edward appears to have used the cloister for exercise during his stay at Lanercost in 1306 and 7. Remains of old board games scratched on the windowsill there.